I want to recommend a channel. It is this guy right here called Chris Andre. I've been watching his videos for a few years, and for my money, he is one of the best boxing analysts you'll ever come across, because he is absolutely forensic in the way that he breaks down fights tactically, the way he breaks down fighters stylistically in terms of the moves that they make and the moves that they need to make. And unlike many other forensic boxing analysts, Chris Andre is very concise, very precise and very concise. So he doesn't take half an hour or 45 minutes to explain something which is really explainable in 10 minutes. And that's something I myself am sometimes guilty of. So I can't recommend him highly enough. Make sure you check him out. He made a video where he came out in defense of Tunde Ajayi following Anthony Yarde's loss to Lyndon Arthur. He believes that a lot of boxing fans and people within the boxing fraternity are being far too harsh on Tunde, and they're not giving him enough credit. I actually agree with that for the most part. I think that with a lot of Tunde's harshest critics, it comes down to the fact that they don't like him as a person. They think he comes across as very arrogant and narcissistic, and therefore that translates over to their assessment of his ability as a trainer. In my videos over the years, I've said many times I think he's a good trainer. My criticisms of Tunde have been more about his decision-making as a manager, and also the way he treats Anthony Yarde from a psychological point of view. And I'll come on to that a little bit later on, because there's good and bad in terms of the way that Tunde handles Anthony psychologically. But as far as Tunde's ability as a trainer, I think he doesn't get enough credit, as I say, because a lot of people just don't like him as a person, so they don't want to give him credit. And Chris Andre makes a lot of great points in the video that he made about Tunde, so I recommend you watch that. But if you look at Anthony Yarde, a guy who's only had, 12 amateur fights, however many pro fights now, normally a fighter who's that inexperienced will not be anywhere near that polished. And again, this is a point I've made in multiple videos in the past. You have to give Tunde credit for that. At the same time, not every fighter that Tunde has trained is as polished as Anthony Yarde. So some of it also comes down to Yarde's innate ability and his work ethic, his ability to pick up things that he's taught, because not all fighters can pick things up as quickly. Anthony clearly is a fast learner. So again, I do have to agree that when people say Tunde's just rubbish as a trainer, he's no good, he's holding Anthony back, it is a bit harsh. What I will say though, and I mentioned this in my post-fight video following the Arthur fight, is that Anthony Yarde lacks pressure fighting skills. So I had a conversation in the comment section on Chris Andre's video, and I'm just going to read out the comments that I made rather than trying to regurgitate it from memory. I said, "I've always been impressed by the skills Tunde has taught Yarde. Normally a fighter with such little experience will not look so polished. However, the style Tunde teaches is modeled on Mayweather, and it doesn't translate as well for a 5'11" light heavyweight, at least not when he's fighting taller opponents. If Yarde was 6'2", but still 175 pounds, I think Tunde's style would work better for him. But he's relatively short for the weight, and in his 2 losses, he's shown a lack of pressure fighting skills against taller men. And those are skills he will need to learn going forward, because there are plenty of other tall light heavyweights who will undoubtedly look to employ similar tactics to Kovalev and Arthur. Is Tunde the guy to teach him those skills? I'm not so sure. I think at the very least, it wouldn't hurt to bring someone else in to assist and develop other aspects of his game. The skills he's learned from Tunde will still serve him well against certain styles and opponents, but I do feel he needs more. Yarde basically allowed Arthur to steal the fight by not being assertive and proactive enough. He was moving forward, doing a lot of feinting, slipping, and posturing, but nowhere near enough punching. He was operating with the mentality of a counterpuncher, when what he actually needed was the mentality of a pressure fighter. As you said in your post-fight video, he was trying to be too perfect, quote unquote. That's not going to work when you're up against a taller, rangier guy who's determined to keep the fight long. You have to be more willing to commit, and that comes with risk. So why didn't Yarde commit more? Is it because he genuinely believed he was winning comfortably? Was it because he didn't know how to apply more effective pressure without getting consistently tagged? Or was it because he and Tunde were mindful about gassing out, as happened in the Kovalev fight, and thus decided to err on the side of caution tactically? Either way, Tunde surely has to take some blame for that. I've always been impressed with Tunde's ability to instill confidence and self-belief in Yarde, which is absolutely essential with such an inexperienced fighter. But at the same time, you need to be careful not to give the fighter unrealistic expectations and inaccurate perceptions. You need to keep him grounded in reality. But with some of Yarde's team, you get the feeling that they're teetering on the brink of cheerleading. Telling Yarde he got robbed really isn't helping. And that is another area of concern for me with regards to Tunde. Yarde has been in at the deep end now. He's a man. The time for treating him with kid gloves, psychologically, is over. His team need to get real with him now. Positivity is great and it's very important, but you need to tell him some home truths as well. So those are the comments I left on Chris Andre's video. He did respond. I encourage all of you to go to his channel, subscribe, and you can read his response. And he said he agrees with many of the points that I made. And as far as trainers, he thinks that a trainer that could teach him better pressure fighting skills would be appropriate. But also, he mentions a trainer who could teach him the David Haye approach, where he's on the outside like an ambush fighter. I have to assume he means someone like Adam Booth. And funny he should say that, because I was actually thinking it myself right before I wrote the comments on his video. I was thinking it myself. I was thinking, Anthony Yarde is an explosive athlete. That is the kind of fighter who Adam Booth likes working with, because he works on their explosiveness. He tries to make the most of it. See, Adam Booth fighters typically, especially the likes of George Groves and David Haye back in the days, they were low volume. But when they did throw, they would throw fast and they would throw hard. Now, I made a video talking about George Groves. And in that video, I was talking about how George Groves said that with Paddy Fitzpatrick, his punching power actually decreased because of the way he was training. He was doing a lot of endurance sessions and stuff like that. And that is not conducive to explosive power punching. With Adam Booth, it was more interval training, sprints. It wasn't about endurance. Okay? With Anthony Yarde, the training I've seen him do with Tunde, yeah, there's a certain amount of explosive training. And I know Anthony Yarde used to be a sprinter, so I'm sure he still does sprints now. But there is a lot of endurance work, and a lot of the Mayweather training style is based on endurance. It's not really a training style that's geared towards explosive power punching. I mean, Mayweather was explosive, but he wasn't a Tommy Hearns. He wasn't a Roy Jones Jr. in terms of explosiveness and dynamic punching power. So perhaps if Yarde was with somebody like Adam Booth, it could bring more of his punching power out, particularly in the right hand, because when Yarde is attacking people, there's something a bit deliberate about it. It is very Mayweather-esque. You know, when Mayweather decides to go forward, he's not very dynamic going forward. He's quite deliberate. Whereas if Yarde was taught more of a David Hayes style, where he can move around on the outside, use his feet, because he does have quick feet when he wants to get up on his toes, despite the fact that he's very muscular. He's nimble and he can move around well when he decides to. If they could work on that aspect of his game, then that might help negate the height and reach advantage that certain opponents have over him. If he can just use sudden movements, darting in and out, darting past the jab and then exploding with a shot and then getting out again. So that's also a very interesting possibility if Anthony Yarde did decide to go with a different trainer, or at least bring another trainer in. You know, I personally can't see Anthony Yarde being able to bring another trainer in, because I think Tunde would find that difficult to accept. I mean, maybe I'm wrong. Unless it's somebody Tunde knew personally and was already friends with, I suspect that Tunde would find that difficult to accept. But it's definitely an interesting proposition, Yarde going with someone like Adam Booth, or again, bringing someone else in who is more well-versed on pressure fighting skills. Because, again, what Yarde was doing in the Arthur fight is he was moving forward with the mentality of a counterpuncher. Now look, some of the best pressure fighters are also counterpunchers. Mike Tyson was a very good counterpuncher. But Mike Tyson was far more willing to initiate exchanges and take risks against his opponents than Anthony Yarde was against Lyndon Arthur. He was far too content to wait and wait and wait and wait rather than working for his openings and making things happen. You see? And again, I asked the questions in my comments on Chris Andre's video. Was Anthony Yarde, you know, that hesitant and not proactive because he felt like he was comfortably ahead? Was it because he didn't really know how to go about the job in terms of applying more pressure and throwing more punches without getting hit a lot? Or was it because he was mindful of gassing out like he did against Kovalev? These are questions I can only speculate about when it comes to the answers, but Team Yarde are going to need to answer those questions. They're going to need to address those issues. And if all he's getting from his team is "you got robbed," then are those issues going to get addressed? So again, these are the concerns I have for Anthony Yarde moving forward. The skills he's learned from Tunde are good skills and they will help him and be very useful against certain opponents. But as a 5'11" light heavyweight, those skills and that style is not going to translate very well for the taller guys who keep him at distance. So let's see what happens with him going forward. Hopefully he makes the right decisions and gets the most out of his ability. Let me know what you guys think in the comments below about all the points I've raised in this video. And make sure you check out Chris Andre on YouTube. He's also on Twitter, I believe. He's on Twitter as Bet Boxing. And yeah, just give me your thoughts and feelings on where Tunde Ajayi and Anthony Yarde go from here on in. There was another point I wanted to make, but as usual, my old brain is like a sieve sometimes and I forget. So if it comes to me, I'll talk about it in a different video. Oh, sorry. No. That was the point I had to make, which see, it finally came back to me. That it often happens in my videos. The point I had to make was about Tunde's approach psychologically, the way he deals with Yarde. Now, as I mentioned in the comments on Chris's video, Tunde is very good at instilling confidence. And with a fighter as inexperienced as Yarde, that is absolutely vital. You have to instill confidence. You have to make up for the fact that he doesn't have the experience. So you need to do more things to instill confidence. But you also don't want to overdo it, because then the fighter develops unrealistic expectations and inaccurate perceptions. And there is a danger of that happening. Maybe it's already happened in Team Yarde. And that is the area where I'm a little concerned in terms of Tunde's approach. That he's over-egged the pudding a little bit. You know, being positive is essential, but it's fantastic. But you also need to be real. You need to tell your fighters some home truths from time to time. That's the only way the fighter is going to improve. And obviously he has improved a lot under Tunde, but there's still certain aspects of his game that need development, such as his pressure fighting skills and his pressure fighting mentality. You see, Floyd Mayweather was a 5'8", 5'9" welterweight with very long arms, much longer arms than most of his opponents. And the Mayweather style was primarily geared towards outside fighting. Now, Mayweather could fight very well out close as well. But Mayweather would primarily like to keep, especially at welterweight, he'd primarily like to keep his opponents outside and control the action from there. Anthony Yarde doesn't have the luxury of having longer arms than most of his opponents. And nor is he as experienced as Mayweather was as an amateur. And he's just not as good as Mayweather. And also because he's more bulky. You see, Mayweather is very slender. Anthony Yarde is very bulky as a light heavyweight. So he can't make himself small the way Mayweather can. You know when Mayweather turns side on and you're looking from the perspective of an opponent? There's hardly any target there. He makes himself so small and so slender. Yarde is a big, bulky, muscular guy. He can't make himself that small. He doesn't have the same kind of reach relative to his height as Mayweather does. Doesn't enjoy those kind of advantages that would allow him to keep most of his opponents on the outside and dominate them there. So developing the come forward pressure fighting skills are going to be essential. As I mentioned before, as Chris Andre said, the only alternative would be to become an out-and-out ambush fighter, David Hayes style, Roy Jones Jr. style, where you're in and out, where it's all about short, explosive, powerful bursts. And if they trained Anthony Yarde that way, I think they could increase his punching power. So anyway, I'll leave it there.